So now we've got our receiver in and we've got our fuselage made. I think it's probably time to start talking about putting the wings on. But in fact, before we do that, there's a little idea of timing here that I thought would be worth mentioning. And that is, in this bag here, we've got a little brown envelope here. Now, I seem to remember that these sort of little brown envelopes were used for putting coins in originally, but of course we've actually used them for popping in our rigging spool. Oh, look, I've got a rigging tool there, nice and a nice pink one. It's the luck of the draw as to what colour you get, but what it says on the envelope here is that we really ought to, before installing the rigging, we ought to stretch it. So it says 24 hours, but obviously the longer that you can do it, the better. This is a very unstretchy material, by the way. It is quite stiff, but there is always a little bit of latent stretch in there. So what we can do is just unwind it from the spool and basically turn it into a loop by tying a knot in the two ends together, and then literally hanging something relatively heavy from a hook on the door or somewhere up high, so that this can dangle for a number of hours or days whilst we get that last bit of stretch out of it. So let's do that now at this stage of the build, and that will lead us on to doing the rigging after we've done the undercarriage and obviously attach the wings. So let's find the end of. Find the two ends. So there's one and there's the other. And I'm just going to do a simple knot in these, like so, and go and hang something heavy from it. When I say heavy, something like a ceramic mug or similar will do. And essentially all you need to do is, well, if that happened to be the handle, you just wrap this round like so, grab the rest through, and then it's obviously attached like so, and you can hang it from a hook. So if you go and do that now, then we should have this rigging ready for when we are needing it for the installation of the rigging on the pup. So the first thing we need to create our lower wings is a couple of ribs. These are all D13, and if you have built a Microaces aircraft before, you know that normally our ribs come in twos. So you've got essentially two ribs there. There's a score down the center. Don't know if that can be seen. Focus. There we go, you can see it now. And that score, we just need to run our knife down to separate the two parts. And we should come out with two ribs. Like so. I'm just going to tidy up the ends. They're slightly scalloped there, so I'm just going to flatten them off. These are quite generous ribs, so they go the whole width of the wing, so you can afford to trim a little, like so. So those are the D13s, and then we've got the main event here. So the lower wings are these two down here, which are, yeah, I've been naming all of these because on this sheet here, everything is D, but it's not D. This was obviously printed before we changed to Z, so it should be on your sheet Z12 and Z13. Apologies for the previous parts that we've got out here, which I verbally named with a D prefix. And it should have shown on screen down below that it was actually a Z rather than a D. So although it's printed here D, on yours it should be printed Z. Anyway, it's pretty easy to identify these parts anyway. There's no getting away from this being a lower wing. So hence all of the dirt kicked up from the undercarriage, from the wheels. So let's just remove our Z12 for now. And we'll start preparing. This is slightly different sequence than our normal aero kit lower wing sequence. If you've built our kits before, but stick with it. And also, obviously, with the ribs themselves, we've also got some stickers. So the prefix is correct. You've got S10 and S11. So S10, I believe, goes on this wing, which is actually the starboard wing. When you flip it over, it's on the right hand side. So what we need to do with one of our ribs here is create a covering for it using the S10 sticker. So let's just remove the sticker from the backing paper. And then the idea is to place the rib, the bottom part of the rib, which is the straight long edge, in the middle of our sticker. I was going to say easier said than done, but that actually seemed quite easy. So, and then what we need to do is just fold the sticker around the sides of our rib. Like so. Which, actually, that part's easier said than done. Right, let's use the press method. So I'm literally just rolling it over onto the side and pressing it down. There we go, giving it to stick up those sides there. We're actually using a new sticker material here. Our previous sticker material suppliers are no longer able to provide the sticker material, so we've had to change it slightly. And the material that we are now using is slightly stiffer than before. So when you put it around these little parts like this, it does take a little while to take up position, and it requires a little bit of manipulation. Make sure those creases are put in. But as soon as it's there, it stays, which is great. It's also slightly tougher than the previous material, which in certain circumstances is a very useful attribute to have. So there's our rib. Now, before we actually attach that, obviously it goes in this position here. Before we attach that, there are a few things that we can do to this wing Firstly, we can use our ball tool just to go and compress those edges together. So I'm just going to work my way around. The trailing edge. The other place I'm going to compress as well is this little tab here. This actually inserts into the fuselage. You can see the little slot there for it, and if we compress it, it just makes it easier to slot in. So do that on both sides, and then continue on the underside of the wing, compressing the edges. There we go. So you've also, on here, you've got a score, a laser score that runs down the wing itself, and you use that to fold the wing over, just sort of breaking the flat. You don't have to fold it right over it, you just have to have an angle on it that's probably a little over exaggerated as well. So the rib actually sits on the inside. You've got a slot here, and it's worth just running something through the slot just to make sure that it's all open. That's not the best choice of something to put through. Now I've got a slightly thinner. Okay, run that through just to smooth the edges off, and then our rib actually sits just on the very inside of that slot, like so. Then you can line up the graphics as best possible, and then obviously we can then stick this down. So all we need to do is just apply some glue to the inside, or the unstickered edge, like so. Oh, I picked up a new glue. Nice full tube of foam to foam. Shouldn't be using that. I should be using my ever decreasing tube. Anyway, so let's pop that just on the inside of that slot, lining up all the graphics, and I want it right on the edge of that slot, like so. There we go. So we'll just let that dry off somewhat, and then just make sure it's all pressed home, and we can crack on with the other side. So here we have our Z13. Go. So we'll just prepare that, scooting around the edges, do that tab as well. And on the other side too. There we go. So just pop the wire through the slot just to make sure it's smoothed out. And then we'll establish our bend in the wing, which actually obviously gives it slight undercamber too. And then we'll go about attaching our S11 sticker. There we go. Now this is the one that's going to cause the problems, isn't it? Maybe not. Not quite there. There we go. So I'm just going to roll it over onto one side so I get that fold in. And fold it up the other side. There we go. We can actually use a little bit of toolage here as well. Something a little flatter. Go. Right, so I can now apply this also to our other wing. So once again, sitting on the other way up, sitting on the inside, like so. Okay, let's glue that into place. Get all the graphics lined up. Then we can just set that aside to glue, like we have this one. And then we can bring it all together. I can also use the back of the knife just to shuffle in any of the sticker that happens to be sticking out a bit. There we go. Right. So, normally when we make a Microaces aircraft, we will bring these two parts together before applying them to the fuselage. But in this case, we're going to do it a little bit differently. We're actually going to add one wing at a time. Before we do that, let me just noticed a bit of sticker sticking out the back there. Let's just remove that. So what we're going to do here is, you've got this slot at the front here, and obviously this protruding part of the wing sits inside the fuselage. So we're actually going to marry that up just to dry fit it, and I can actually see that this part here, the front part of the protrusion here, is a little bit too long. It's not fitting exactly in the gap, but there is a score that is a continuation of the score that runs along the whole of the fuselage, and I'm just going to use that to nip about 1 millimeter off there. So now that should sit much better in that gap, like so. There we go. It's still quite a nice tight fit. But it will go in. So I'm just going to put that tab into the slot there. And then I'm going to put my wing into the slot there. Now you'll also notice that just here there's a notch. And that notch really needs to be up against the central keel. Now what's preventing it at the moment is that the wing is pushing up against the fuselage here. So I'm actually going to also remove a thin slice from the edge of the wing just there. Now you may not have to do this because an adjustment may have been made to the kit prior to you receiving it, but if you've got the limited edition kit, then it may well be that you have to do this. So I'm just going to nip about, probably 0.5 millimeter off there, and the first thing I'm doing is popping that tab into the slot, like so, and then pushing everything in. So that's much better. And also, obviously, you've got the wing coming up against the side of the fuselage just there. So you need that to marry up. Obviously, the front edge of the wing just there sits on that little shelf created by the parts in the fuselage. And so that's where we want the whole thing to install, like so. And in fact, I'd probably take a little more off that wing. So I took about 0.5 mil. I probably want to take another 0.5 mil from it. There we go. Tidy that up using the back of the knife. There we go. So try again, and that sits now perfectly in place. So the edge of the tab coming into the fuselage from the wing is actually halfway across that 2 millimeter keel that's sitting in the middle there. So what we can do now is actually glue this into place. So there are various areas where we now need glue. First of all, we can put it onto the keel itself, where the part comes into contact. We can put it on the edge of the fuselage, just a thin bead running along the edge there. And we can put it on the shelf that's created by those staggered parts, like so. And the other place we can put it is on the edge of the front or leading part of the wing, where it's going to push onto the fuselage. Like so. And then what I'm going to do is just bring it all together so we get some of that glue on both sides. And then immediately remove it and let that glue dry before we bring it all back together again. So we've given it a few minutes. Let's put it all into place now. So I'll put this, you'll notice that I didn't put any glue on the slot itself, and that's because obviously we're leaving it to dry, and the slot needs to move into, or the tab needs to move into the slot, and if we had dry glue it would have difficulty doing that. So let's just pop that all in, make sure it's all resting down so that the join from the wing to the fuselage is good with no gaps, and obviously make sure that it's sitting nicely on that ledge that's created, the little shelf that's created, and that the tab is all the way in, so there's no gap between the wing and the fuselage. So, and that obviously it's positioned halfway like so. Okay, that looks fantastic. It should have a little in the way of dihedral in it as well, because obviously that shelf has dihedral too. And then what we can do is do exactly the same on the other side. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of trimming, as we've seen before on the other wing, but it all should come together quite nicely. I'll crack on with that and I'll get back to you as soon as we've got that in position. So we've now got both wings stuck onto the fuselage. We've got a good amount of dihedral on both of them, as you can see there. And I'm going to leave this aircraft upside down to let the glue completely set, and obviously keep that dihedral in place. And we're going to start making the bottom part of the fuselage to go over those wings. So to make the bottom part of the fuselage that covers the lower wings, we're going to need a couple of the 2mm parts, and that's D12 and D11, which are these two parts here. We need to make a few little modifications to them. Certainly, if you're building the special edition kit, because in our haste we actually I did modify the cut file after the first build, but for some reason it didn't get through to the actual laser, unfortunately. But really it's quite simple. You see these little dome tabs that we've got here. All we need, just remove them. That's all we need to do. Just get rid of them, like so. There we go. And this is actually a little half rib. It's got the score down the center of it just there. So we just need to split it. Well, in fact, we don't need to split it completely. We can cut it almost all the way through so that it folds over on itself, like so. And what we're going to do is just glue those two halves together by adding some glue onto the face of the inner face of the folding part. So that comes together like so. There we go. And that neatly slots into our part here. So in fact, because the 2mm that I'm using is slightly over 2mm, I'm just going to give that a quick squeeze just to make sure that it fits in, like so. And then I can glue it into place. Okay, there we go. So it forms a P basically. Now that should let to dry, but if I just grab that, that should then just sit neatly into that space there, and you can glue it into place. We might as well glue it now, and then everything will stabilize. There was the plan to have a plastic part on here as well, but in fact there's no need because of the modified way in which we assembled these wings onto the fuselage. So there we go. So yeah, you'll see on your plastics a P9, not needed. You can use it for something completely different if you want. So make sure you get it nice and central, because it is actually going to be used as a guide for the material that's going to cover over here. So obviously if the sides here stick out any one side rather than the other, then that might cause an issue. So just make sure it's nice and central, and it'll give a lot of strength to the underside of the aircraft as well, where of course you've got the fixed undercarriage. So you just pop that over there to dry off. We will clear the decks of that, and we'll grab on our fuselage sheet. We've got Z4. So let's grab Z4. Now Z4 needs a little bit of treatment to it. We just get our score and bevel guide here. I just turn that around. Then you'll see Z4 down here. It's got a couple of, so we've got our Z4 part shown here, and there are a couple of scores and some bevels. In fact, I'm going to freehand the scores. It's pretty straightforward. It just runs from that corner there to that corner there. Turn it round. Go. So now these should fold up like so, and we just need to bevel our edges along the longer part of Z4. So I'm just going to do it whilst I'm holding the part, just to get a good 45-ish degree bevel. Now the beveling guide doesn't actually show this, but I'm actually going to put a bevel on this edge here as well, where that comes into contact with the underside of the wing, because it comes in at an angle, fairly shallow angle, but I'm just going to give it probably around about a 60 degree, or going the other way, 30 degree. If you know what I mean. So I'll continue with all of this, and then we'll come back when we need to start fitting this to the fuselage. So I've got the bevels in now, and my sides folding down. And now I can dry fit this to the fuselage. So it's all pretty obvious. That goes there. I've got a tab that I cut off, or holds the part in, just protruding slightly there. And I also think that it was protruding here as well. So just going to give that a quick shave too. So probably get the sanding stick in there. There we go. So let's try again. Well, this is why we dry fit. So that all looks pretty good. Everything seems to fit in the right slots. So all we need to do now is apply glue so we can bring all that together. So I'm going to add a little glue to the back edge here. And run it up the keel. Also, obviously, on the sides where the two parts come together, two parts of the skin come together, there and there. And then also, fairly generous amount where the skin comes in contact to the side of the fuselage at the front here. Like so. And also down on the sides of the part that we just fitted. There we go. And the other part that we're going to do is just the edges that are going to come in contact with the bottom wing. Oh, like so. Now I'm not going to put any onto the wings themselves because I don't know exactly where it's going to fall. I don't want to create too much mess. But the other place that I'm going to put glue is firstly on the front edge there, where it's going to come into contact with the foam at the front. And also I'm going to add glue onto these edges too, because we're going to let everything dry off and then bring it together dry for that grab. Okay. The other area I'm going to put a little bit of glue is just in the V of the fold, and that actually helps hold the fold over when the glue's dry. So, just put a little bit on the back edge there as well, where it comes into contact. Okay, well, we're going to let this dry off properly, and then we'll come and put it all together. So we've had some drying time, so let's crack on with popping this on to the fuselage. So I'm just going to go making sure I'm getting it pretty central there and stuck down. And then I'm going to go all the way, making sure that it's central all the way to the front of the fuselage. There we go. Actually, I'm just going to, I haven't pressed it down yet. So I'm just going to move, take that away, move these out slightly. I didn't notice that when I was dry fitting, but these sides were very close. So they were actually tucking in underneath. So I'm just going to angle this slightly so that they tuck in nicely, and then make sure that tucks too. There we go. And now I can push these side flaps down so that they come into contact with the wing. So, and now I'm going to use a variety of tools to help me just finish all of this off. And any excess glue should also be able to remove at the same time. Let's bleed it off. Around the other side, do exactly the same. Go. And then I'm just going to use the ball tool to help me bring the edges together. Maybe a little of the back edge with the knife as well. And there we go, all in situ. So now we've popped our wings on and we have the bottom of the fuselage in place and all faired in. So, and you can just carry on pushing everything down, making sure everything is smooth and none of those joins are showing through either. So there we go. Job done.